of the plays I've read of yours this year, Dan, like I've read Tamerlane, I've read Beowulf, I've read Alexander, I've read the Arthur plays, and but I believe that's not all the plays you've written this year. Like I wouldn't be wrong, would I?
No, I wrote a play earlier this year about my family. Uh, I mean, off the top of my head, yeah, I mean, I think I've written 6 or 7 plays, well, maybe 8 or 9 plays, 10 plays, and then plus the book. So I'm right now. This play I'm writing is my 70th play, um, the Joe Hill play. Um,
Yeah.
but mostly of the last 10 plays, they've been of the historical nature, because the first 50 or 60 plays were all basically based upon Danny Wagner and my life.
Yeah, yeah. This focus on myth in your plays, or on antiquity, or like figures like Alexander, great figures of history. Like it's really kind of it's really noticeable now. Do you know what I mean? We're all expecting an Odysseus play in the works next. You know what I mean?
Well, I do have ideas on some of the Greek gods. When I was a kid, I loved Jason and the Argonauts, the film from the
Yeah,
50s. And I like the fact that they had the Zeus and Hera, I think it was, looking into the wading pool up in Olympus, and seeing
yeah,
the
yeah,
movie. And I actually saw that in the theaters when I was in 71 or 72, when I was a little kid, when we'd sweep out New York movie theaters that were open 24 hours, and sweep up all the old condoms and whatnot in the theater, and get to watch a movie for free.
yeah. It's not fun working with this cinema. Like, do you mean those all like Ray Harryhausen films
Yeah,
then?
yeah.
With yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah, like when I was a kid, I was really into Greek mythology as well. And yeah, I'm embarrassingly well versed on all the monsters and all that crap.
Well, that's why, that's one
But
of the reasons I wanted to do Beowulf, because
yeah,
I touch upon Grendel and Grendel's mother element in the Edge of the Shone, and I wanted to
yeah,
do Beowulf more intimately, because I had recently seen clips of the 2007 Zemeckis film about Beowulf, where
yeah,
Angelina
that one.
Jolie plays the Grendel's mother. And that wasn't the first time that Grendel's mother was turned into a seductress. There was a live
Yeah,
action movie back in the early 90s. I forget the name. I think it was a porno star who starred as Grendel's mother. But I said, so in that play, which, let's see, I don't even know the fucking titles, because I just had the Beowulf play. Let's see, the Beowulf play is The Mind Never, and
mine.
the Tamerlane play is The Night Slow Poison, which is taken from a line from a Weldon Keys poem called For My Daughter, in which the bitter narrator reveals that he never really had a daughter. And that's about Tamerlane's hatred, or his killing of a daughter that he didn't know he had. And so I play with that thing. And then in the Beowulf play we get the killing of the seductress female of Grendel's mother. But I tried, in the Beowulf play, I tried to ground that, like the Arthurian plays, in a more realistic manner, in that
Yeah, the Bresson thing. Yeah,
yeah, well, Grendel is not really a monster. He's a berserker. He's a human being who's sort of crazy and large.
yeah,
And then we get Beowulf, kills him in the traditional manner by ripping his arm off. He dies. Then we get the seductress mother. But the seductress turns out to be played, hopefully, by the same character playing the Chloe character that I had mentioned earlier.
yeah.
And so she would play Chloe and play the seductress mother in the young form. The older form would be played by the Megan actress. And then there's a child who plays a younger version of the Grendel's mother. And she poisons people, and Grendel ends up basically ending up offing her. And then we get
That's a very curious scene. The whole scene that plays out in the grotto with Beowulf and Grendel's mother, where yeah, that's
well, because
very curious, creepy
she's
scene actually.
using her femininity and wiles, and even being a child, that he won't kill her. And he eventually does. And then I added the comic element, because the dragon is based upon the dragon in Beowulf was the first, I believe, the first or the second appearance of a fire-breathing dragon. And I decided that since this takes place supposedly in the original Beowulf 50 years later, that's far too old, because Beowulf would then be a 70-year-old man, and the idea that he could somehow superhumanly take on any monster and win would be ridiculous. So I made it just 15. So you could say 50 and 15 were mixed up a lot of times. You know, in biblical stuff, the 969 years of Methuselah, if we go divide that by 12, it's more realistic that he's a 90-year-old man. But in the same way, I said, well, let me have Beowulf, and the dragon that ruins his countryside is really him suffering from gonorrhea. And so the dragon is the penis, and then we get a funny scene with his physician, who's basically saying, you know, you got to stop fucking all these slave girls that we capture, you know, and basically he's like, well, I have stopped. I'm only fucking like 5 women a day, and he's like, you know, and so we get what might have been, if Beowulf really existed, what might have been the source of the dragon. On the other hand, Tamerlane is based upon a real person, Tamerlane or Timur, and the Timurid dynasty. And the only real addition there that isn't based on reality is his daughter Ilnara, which is, if you read my great play with Sargon, Sargon had his daughter Enheduanna, who is the first known published human being. Her poems and song lyrics are the first known account of a human being having their works published by a publisher. And so I said, well, what if I invert the Sargon dynamic? Because even though Tamerlane did have daughters and sons with his concubines, we don't know any of the daughters. We know Miran Shah, the son who's listed there, who's sort of a goofy, you know, sort of playful mini Tamerlane. I said, let's have some tension there, and I get into a lot of political aspects because this was written in 2020, so there are echoes of COVID-19, and COVID is actually mentioned too in Levels there, because it's set in 2020, and so we get the idea of protests, and there's a lot of the stuff here in the U.S. with black people being beaten and black men being shot. She is an activist in that age, and basically she gets up. She eventually pushes Tamerlane too far, and she ends up, you know, being killed off by one of his secret agents, I guess you would call them back then, even.
Yeah, like there's also in the Alexander play. There's also something curious where the Alexander character is 3 different characters. There's Alexander the good, Alexander the bad, and Alexander the god. And they're all 3 separate. They're almost like one
there are
character.
4 Alexanders. There's the good, the bad Alexander, the great Alexander, and then the god Alexander.
My mistake. Yeah, there's this 4. Oh god, and they interact with the characters, but they're almost unaware of each other. Although at some points they are aware of each other, and they start but internal conversation.
On stage we see Alexander murder the caretaker of what is it, what do I call her? Anyway, he murders the caretaker of the cult of Apollo, and yet later on, it's another Alexander who claims to have killed her, and so there's that melding of which Alexander is really the worst of the Alexanders.
That's quite a brutal ending to that play, actually. Like it seems that you're having fun though. Like with the thing about these plays is that it does seem you're having fun, sort of taking these established myths, these things which, like I was alluding to, a lot of people from their childhood have like a personal connection to, and subverting or flipping or twisting or doing, applying your own take to them. You know, like with for instance, the whole thing with the dragon. Like you know that we're coming in with a certain expectation or assumption. And you seem to take a certain glee in just almost giving us the opposite of that.
Well, I mean, yeah, and then we end up, with the commentary by Danny and Chloe and them at the end. But you always have to try to do something different. There's no unless you're doing a series and you have a recurring character, and it's a I guess maybe a detective or something. Um, you should always try to change things slightly and what. Too often people fall into the traps. Now I changed. I when I did the Arthurian plays, the Camelot Quintet, I said, let me do King Arthur as John Cassavetes would have done King Arthur. Because if you remember, there's a scene, for example, where Sir Gawain and Sir Azrael are being talked to by a barkeeper about the jousting tournament, and he's talking about it like it's a modern sporting event, soccer in your country or something, and he's talking about, oh, how Sir Eric, he set an all-time record by never being unhorsed in the whole tournament and whatnot, and we hear this the way people would talk in a more modern sense. We get a revelation that Gawain may have accidentally killed a woman, which somehow damages his psyche. But this is played over the whole five plays. In Beowulf, for example, it's only one play. And I'm probably another character I'm going to probably take on is Gilgamesh, although I did a book 15 or so years ago called the Enkidiad, which is based upon the Enkidu hairy man character that Gilgamesh battles, and the main character there was called Gilbert G. Ames. But I probably want to go back again and expand that, because there's a lot of gaps in there that I can play with ideas. So that's an ideal thing, and Gilgamesh in a sense is a precursor to all of these. Thor from the comic books, at least, is a comic book. I think they made Thor in the Marvel universe. Comic book universe. He's an alien that came to Earth just like the ancient astronauts, and they were worshipped as gods, even though they were aliens. And in a similar way, Gilgamesh is a half man, half god. He's a prototype for Jesus Christ here in Christianity. So he's a character that's ripe for plucking and playing around with.
It's these kind of great sort of historical myth as well, like King Arthur and Beowulf and all this stuff. Like, it does seem that you enjoy taking people who are in a way kind of heroes or sacred cows, or and sort of making them humane, making them real, making them I suppose I would venture to say flawed a lot of the time. Kind of I mean, not all of them. So for instance, I think like some people like King Arthur gets quite a sympathetic treatment, but I mean, I think Guinevere is really the hero of that whole series.
Well, my favorite character is Dagonet, because Dagonet was a minor knight that later becomes important as possibly the person who really does understand Guinevere. Because I make Lancelot and Tristram, the two classic heroes, I make them sort of fops. I reemerge Gawain as the main hero in Camelot, and Modred becomes basically a pouty little shit rather than necessarily an existential force. But there's just to get back to Beowulf too. What I do there is I infuse a science fiction trope, because how Grendel's mother is killed and what she seemingly is may be supernatural, because it turns out she's a pod person, like in Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Like revenge, like body snatchers.
Yeah, because he finds these watermelons, and he cuts one open, and there's looks like little fetuses. So it seems that Grendel's mother, is some kind of a being that even if he were to kill her normally, without having seen these pods, she would just regenerate and come back the next night. And so and we also know she's not really Grendel's mother, that Grendel was sort of like her golem, that Grendel was somehow taken in by her, and I don't know if you know the golem myth. It's a Jewish myth about
like the myth, the big clay figure.
Yeah, right.
There's film as well. Have you seen the film of the golem?
Oh yeah. Silent films. I love silent films. And so the goal. So the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. You could also say that who is the character that Caligari controls? I forget.
Caesar.
Caesar. Yeah. Cesare, however you want to pronounce it. It could be that Grendel is the Caesar of Grendel's mother. They're not really physically, genetically, presumably connected, but she's this maybe creature that controls things and is constantly smart. But Beowulf kills her, but he doesn't attack the physical. He kills her, and she sort of like dissipates the way the Wicked Witch of the West dissipates in The Wizard of Oz.
What I really liked about the stage directions you wrote was that you wrote Beowulf decapitates Grendel's mother, and you basically said something to the effect of, "I don't know how you're gonna pull this off. I don't give a fuck." You just figure it out. Dude, I want a decapitation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you have to approach things if I go back to the Tamerlane play, I wanted, the one that I haven't done an interview. I've done interviews about these characters. I did the three greats, the two greats interviews. I did an interview on Tamerlane, and I haven't been able to find someone to interview about Sargon. But with the end here, we get Ilnara basically going out very meekly, and we expecting her ending. And then, with the Beowulf play, it ends up back with the meta commentary and the characters arguing about the best way to end the play. And the actor's character, Chloe, says, most actors like a definitive end. And Danny, the last thing he says is, "No, I mean, you may be right about what actors prefer, but what of the audience at endings? I just don't know about boom, blackout." So you get that ending that has been used before in film and on stage, just the way it's all a dream ending, ends level. But is it really a dream? Because it's not definitive. And in this way, it's used that here you have this great mythic character Beowulf, and it ends with characters commenting on the side, and it ending in a sort of minor whimper. But that's good, because if you think of the characters that are doing the meta commentary are many times more complex versions of the minor characters that you'll see in a Shakespeare play. The witches, boil, double, and boil. I think it's in Lear where the witches appear, or is it Hamlet? I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, but more the witches.
Yeah, and so
oil and trouble, fire burn.
Right, and so you have that aspect of it, but these are more evolved and deeper representations, because these characters reoccur and are adding something deeper to they end up sort of like the Harryhausen film with the Greek gods looking down upon Jason and his band.
Yeah, or like a chorus almost. Yeah. I think sometimes Danny or Manny or something sometimes acts like a chorus, standing on the outside commenting, or there's this filmmaker called Sieberberg, who in the 70s did a film adaptation of the Wagner opera Parsifal.
Oh, yeah.
And the way he staged it was that there's this giant head relief statue of Wagner, like a sneak.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if the entire opera is taking place within, Wagner's head as he sleeps.
Yeah.
So the whole way through, there's this acknowledgement on the side of the fact that, so it's not like this cop-out. It's not like this thing that you produce, rabbit out of the hat, haha, it's all just a fucking, a dream. Yeah. No, from the very beginning, there's a sense of that this could be something happening on the level of either your consciousness or my consciousness or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's similar to levels. And if you remember in the fourth play, which is the Grail quest of the Arthurian play, you get the three questing knights. You get Bors, Parsifal, and Galahad, and they're basically like the Three Stooges. They're played for comic relief. And we get the Fisher King, who has several names and different iterations. But in the Fisher King, he actually has the name Peredur, which is one of the alternate names of Parsifal or Percival. And Bors is the only one that survives, but he's sort of a lackadaisical idiot who I think in one scene, no, it's Galahad who eats bananas, and then like Narcissus, as they're coming back from the Holy Land, he's looking into the water, and I guess he bends over too much, and in his knightly equipment falls into the water. And no one notices that he's gone, and then Parsifal ends up basically chasing a Yeti-like creature in the Andes as they're crossing over from Italy to France or whatever, and he ends up dead. And so
it reads like a surrealist comedy or something, like something from Flann O'Brien or something. It's like a slapstick almost.
Yeah, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, or The Life of Brian. Yeah. Yeah, there's that famous scene. I think is it The Life of Brian and the Holy Grail, where the one knight gets his arm cut off, and then he gets his other arm cut off, and then his leg cut off, and he still keeps coming, and he's missing all of his limbs.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, in a way, it's not too far off. Like the grimy realism, sort of Bresson, some sort of Monty Python by way of Bresson. I think the funny thing is, even in like the first play with Merlin, you have this sort of breaking through of the narrative, and you have at one point, Danny Wagner, looks through like a window basically onto the play and starts to basically talk like God looking down from heaven, or like God in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Just just get on with it.
Well, yeah, and Danny Wagner is basically the all of that quintet. He's
Fire Eyes.
Fire. He's casting the characters this way or that way, and that was a way to work the Danny Wagner character into it. But again, like with the Beowulf play, we're back to Danny Wagner. Even in some of the plays where Danny Wagner and his world are the stars, Danny sometimes can break out of the character. My favorite use of Danny Wagner is when he's a kid. And so I do, one of the plays that I'll probably write in the next few months will be another long family-based play. I don't know whether it's going to be one with my adoptive family or my natural family, because I once, back in 1991, went for a Thanksgiving dinner to one of my natural families, and it was just a perfect comedy.
One of the plays I'm most fond of, is If God Were Alive, and that's a family drama, isn't it?
Yeah, Aunt Darla, from hell.
Well, you're always present in the plays anyway, or some sort of substitute for you is present in there. So life always kind of bleeds in.
With one exception, which is the Tamerlane play. There's no Danny Wagner character, but it's connected to the universe because seemingly an ancestor of Big Frank Concetto appears in there. There are two Marco Polo-like characters, Francis and I think it's Giovanni Concetto, which Giovanni Concetto is described exactly as Big Frank. He's about 6'6", 200 pounds, and Tamerlane offers to have him fuck all his concubines so that his Timurid empire can have these huge knights. He's like, my God, this guy is a monster. I need to have soldiers like him. So there's this sort of minor.
I seem to recall that there was an ancestor of Ronald Halfvan, the Norwegian, in one of the Khan plays. I'm not sure which one, but I'm fairly sure he appeared.
There was. I don't know. It's not Ronald Halfvan. There is an answer. Which character did I use? Off the top of my head, I don't.
Someone who might had more than a passing resemblance to the Norwegian.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, and that's again a way to just keep, because the only crossover, for example, between my poetic universe and the rest of my fictive universe, I think is I mentioned a character who was my first doppelganger, Kevin, from my 3 Kevin poems. And then obviously the fact that the poems are quoted throughout the plays and some of my books and whatnot. So it's a way to give people a way to dive back in and whatnot. And I could imagine, some critic or someone who really loves all my work, maybe writing, a 2,000-word book with the timeline from the Big Bang onto the far future.
Marvel universe, multiverse map of all the different ways your fiction connects up.
Yeah, and I mean, That's interesting, and it would be flattering, but yeah, ultimately it doesn't really matter because each of the works should and does, I think, stand on its own. You don't have to
Yeah.
know anything about a big Frank Concerto beforehand to appreciate the Tamerlane play.
No, no. Like, although it was curious for me to wonder reading something like Levels, like what it must be like for somebody who's never read anything of yours before to sort of go in with like no real assumptions about what's going to happen.
Yeah,
It's
and you know that's one of the reasons too. I have some of the sex scenes too. Is that someone just reading this with no other way there, you know, a little bit of TNA, a little bit of titillation is not bad, you know.
something you have a lot as well now is like audience. It was quite pronounced in the Arthur plays. Was audience sort of actors being planted in the audience,
Yeah.
and the falsified sense of audience participation.
And I did that
Yeah.
in some earlier plays, a few of them, not to that extent, but
Yeah. How do you see that playing? Like the way that kind of the you start to speak in the audience's voice.
as it comes to me, I'm not gonna set in stone anything that I'm gonna do 17 months from now or something, because like I said,
Well, I was just saying the difficulty of putting myself in the shoes of someone who's like never read your work. I mean, like you've got in a way you've got to kind of think from the point of view of somebody who's coming to your work with fresh eyes.
Well, Jessica's saying, "Well, you write too much. You write too much," and I'm like, well, the thing is, you want to throw out a wide enough net. The thing that if I were to not write, if I were to just sit and before we did this, I was talking to you about the idiocy where I work, and Jessica has idiots and stuff at her job that she doesn't like. If all I was going to do is get frustrated and not do that. Uh, uh, that I might not write the thing that gets someone in 72 years to say to do that Schneiderverse kind of timeline or whatnot. And Jessica, because Jessica is much more precise and she likes to write things and she doesn't. I like I say to her is that if I don't do these things, no one else will because I can do them. And I think I was talking with one of the other people who's interviewed me and said an artist has a certain responsibility because if I didn't write a Norwegian in the Family, no one would. Imagine if Melville didn't write Moby Dick. Imagine if Kubrick didn't do 2001: A Space Odyssey. Only he could do that, and only I can do what I can do.
Or else someone else would fuck it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find time for reading yourself? Like I know you watch films and TV stuff. Like, do you actually find time to kind of read other people's literature now? And if so, is there anything you've been reading that you found particularly worthwhile?
Well, just this morning I read a short story that a fellow who's on the E-list that I know sent me that he had published in a magazine, and he told me that it's looking like he's going to get a small book published with a small press, not none of the big presses, but so that made me glad. It was a good short story. It's more prose than the poetic prose that Jessica or I do in different ways. The last I watched a movie. Jessica wanted me to watch this movie that's a precursor to Yasujiro Ozu's Tokyo Story called Make Way for Tomorrow. And Jessica was saying it's a great film. It's not a great film. I mean, it's got a lot of schmaltz. It's got some good moments. Yesterday we rewatched It's a Wonderful Life when I got home, and then I went to sleep. And a couple of the actors from It's a Wonderful Life appear in this film, which was done by Leo McCarey a decade earlier. But it's like I was like, Jess, come on. It's got so much more. The two older characters that are separated at the end by their stupid family are not even particularly likable characters. Not that they'd have to be likable, but they're not even. They don't have the depth of the realism. And so Jessica and I often argue about that because I'm a better critic than she is. That's just the fact. And she's more moved by a lot of the schmaltzy stuff. And I can see the flaws. Not that it was in any way a bad film, but it's not a film on the level of Ozu. Ozu was an absolute mass, and Tokyo Story is one of his 3 or 4 greatest films, and it's one of the great films of all time.
Yeah, I know you're particularly fond of Ozu and his kind of approach to realism, and like I think I still see kind of in a way like like bits of Ozu here and there, like not just in like the fart jokes, but like the approach to a lot of stuff.